Ashley Miller, an 18-year-old high school senior in Memphis, Tennessee, had always considered her life relatively ordinary. She lived in a modest home with her mother, Momma Carol, a hard-working nurse who had raised Ashley alone. The two shared a close bond, though there had always been an unspoken tension surrounding their past. Ashley never questioned the vague responses her mother gave about her father or why she had to take daily medication her entire life. Momma Carol simply called them vitamins, and Ashley, trusting her mother, never pressed for more details. One evening, a heavy rainstorm swept through the city, turning the sky dark and filling the air with the rhythmic patter of raindrops against the windows. Momma Carol prepared a simple dinner, her movements unusually slow and deliberate. Ashley noticed her mother seemed distracted, her eyes darting away whenever their gazes met. After the meal, Momma Carol suggested they sit together in the small kitchen, a space filled with the hum of the refrigerator and the faint scent of old wood. Ashley sensed something was wrong but couldn't have predicted the weight of the revelation to come. Momma Carol began hesitantly, her voice trembling as she spoke. Her words unraveled the truth Ashley had never anticipated. Momma Carol revealed that Ashley had been born HIV positive, a result of an unspeakable trauma Momma Carol endured nearly 2 decades earlier. She explained that the diagnosis had been a secret she carried to protect Ashley from the stigma and judgment she feared her daughter would face. Ashley sat frozen, her mind reeling. The world she thought she knew shattered around her. The moments of her childhood that had seemed strange, the countless doctor visits, the whispered conversations between her mother and healthcare providers, suddenly made sense. Yet, this newfound clarity only deepened her sense of betrayal. She felt an overwhelming wave of anger and confusion. Why had Momma Carol kept this from her? Why had she been made to live a life built on half-truths and silence? The hours following the conversation were a blur. Ashley retreated to her room, her mind flooded with questions and memories she now viewed through a different lens. She recalled the pills she had taken every morning, the strict rules about hygiene and personal space that Momma Carol had enforced. All of it seemed suffocating now, like a life lived under false pretenses. As the rain continued to pour outside, Ashley lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. The pain in her chest felt like it might consume her, a mix of betrayal, fear, and profound sadness. She thought of all the moments she had felt different from her peers, unable to understand why she couldn't have the same freedom they seemed to enjoy. Now she understood, but the understanding came with a heavy burden. That night, Ashley's anger began to take root. Her emotions churned as she grappled with the enormity of her situation. She thought about the stigma surrounding HIV, the isolation it had brought, and the years she had lived in ignorance of her condition. As the storm outside raged on, so too did the storm inside her, setting the stage for a path she had yet to fully envision. At school, Ashley began noticing things she had previously overlooked. The subtle dynamics between teachers and students now seemed more sinister. She saw how certain teachers interacted with the girls in her class, their behaviors hinting at a misuse of power that infuriated her. Mr. Peterson, the math teacher, had a habit of keeping students after class under the guise of extra help. His lingering stares and overly friendly demeanor made Ashley uncomfortable in ways she hadn't fully recognized before. Ms. Evans, the music teacher, seemed to fixate on certain female students during rehearsals, her gaze lingering just a moment too long. Coach Davis, who was popular among students for his charisma, often made inappropriate jokes, laughing them off as harmless banter. And then there was Principal Thompson, the school principal, a man surrounded by whispers of misconduct but shielded by his position and reputation. These observations stirred a deep anger within Ashley. In the days following her mother's revelation, her emotions grew darker. The betrayal she felt at the hands of the world, her mother, society, and now these authority figures, transformed into a simmering rage. She no longer wanted to remain a victim. The pain she had carried her entire life demanded release, and she began to see a way to channel it. If the world had wronged her so deeply, why should she not strike back? She decided that these individuals who misused their positions and preyed on the vulnerable would become the targets of her vengeance. Her plan began to take shape in the quiet of her bedroom late at night. She wrote their names in a notebook, her thoughts sharp and focused. Each name was followed by details she had observed, patterns in their behavior, their vulnerabilities, the ways they could be manipulated. She studied their routines, noting when they were most likely to be alone, the spaces where they seemed least guarded. These details became the foundation of her strategy. Ashley spent her days in school blending into the background, silently observing. She paid close attention to how Mr. Peterson would lean over students' desks, how Ms. Evans would offer private lessons after class, how Coach Davis enjoyed physical proximity during practice drills, and how Principal Thompson seemed to thrive on the flattery of students seeking leniency for minor infractions. Each interaction fed into her growing sense of determination. Her anger crystallized into a clear goal. These individuals who had exploited others without consequence would finally face repercussions. Ashley knew that her methods would cross boundaries, that what she intended to do would blur the lines between justice and vengeance. But in her mind, they deserved to feel the weight of fear, guilt, and pain, the same emotions she had lived with her entire life. The transformation within her was gradual but unrelenting. Ashley no longer felt powerless. Instead, she began to see her condition, her beauty, and her intelligence as tools, means to an end. Her mind was sharp, her observations meticulous, and her resolve unshakable. She envisioned each target brought low, their authority stripped away, their confidence shattered. For the first time, she felt a sense of control, even empowerment, as she prepared to take back what had been stolen from her, her dignity and her sense of justice. Mr. Peterson, the math teacher, had always been overly attentive to Ashley during class. She noticed the way his eyes lingered on her a little too long, and how he often found reasons to call on her even when she didn't raise her hand. His overly familiar tone and the way he leaned in closer than necessary during one-on-one interactions made her uneasy in the past. Now, with her newfound perspective and determination, she saw his behavior as an opportunity to set her plan in motion. Ashley decided to make him her first target. She began by staying behind after his class, feigning confusion over a complex equation. She hesitated at her desk, her book neatly stacked, her pen tapping lightly against her notebook. When the other students had filed out, leaving the room quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock, she approached his desk, her expression carefully constructed, a mix of vulnerability and frustration. She asked for his help, her voice low, her body language slightly hesitant, as if she were unsure of herself. Mr. Peterson, eager to assist, gestured for her to sit beside him. Ashley complied, choosing the seat closest to his desk. She pulled her chair closer under the pretense of better viewing his notes and allowed her knee to brush lightly against his. She apologized softly, her tone tinged with shyness, and he waved it off, though she noticed the slight flush that crept into his cheeks. She dressed strategically that day, nothing overtly inappropriate, just enough to draw attention. Her blouse was a bit more fitted than usual, the neckline modest but flattering. Her skirt, though well within dress code, rode up slightly when she sat, exposing just enough to capture his peripheral glance. She pretended not to notice how his gaze occasionally drifted, focusing instead on the way his voice faltered slightly as he explained the problem. As they worked through the equations, Ashley made sure to engage him, laughing softly at his occasional jokes and leaning in as if hanging on his every word. She let her fingers brush against his hand as she reached for the pen he offered her, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. She observed his body language carefully, the way he stiffened slightly at her touch, the way his voice grew quieter, almost tentative. She complimented his teaching suddenly, boosting his ego, and watched as his professional demeanor began to slip. His posture relaxed, and his focus wavered from the equations they were working on. The boundaries between teacher and student grew blurred as Ashley maintained her performance, allowing him to feel in control while she carefully guided the interaction. When the session ended, Ashley stood to gather her things, moving slowly and deliberately. She thanked him warmly, her voice laced with gratitude, before pausing as if considering something. She looked back at him, her expression thoughtful, and left him with a lingering glance. He hesitated, caught between propriety and temptation, but she could see the conflict in his eyes. It was enough for her to know that the seeds of her plan had been sown. As Ashley walked out of the classroom, she felt a mix of emotions coursing through her. Triumph surged within her. She had taken the first step in reclaiming her sense of control. Yet, Beneath that satisfaction lay an undeniable revulsion, both at him and at herself for what she had just done. She pushed those feelings aside as she walked down the empty hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence. One down, she thought to herself, the plan is in motion, and there is no turning back now. Ashley's plan began to take shape in earnest as she set her sights on her next targets. Each interaction was carefully calculated, each step designed to exploit the weaknesses she had observed in her chosen victims. The process required patient precision and an unwavering focus on her ultimate goal. The line she was crossing grew blurrier with each encounter, but she silenced any lingering doubts, telling herself that they deserved what was coming. Ms. Evans, the music teacher, became Ashley's next target. Ms. Evans had always been reserved, maintaining a professional distance, but Ashley had noticed the way her eyes lingered during lessons. Ashley began to attend extra rehearsals, volunteering to stay late to practice under Ms. Evans' guidance. During these sessions, Ashley played the role of the eager student, expressing a newfound passion for music and seeking her teacher's approval. She made sure to choose moments when the music room was quiet, the soft glow of evening light streaming through the windows. She would position herself close to Ms. Evans during discussions about technique, leaning slightly forward, her tone soft and inviting. She complimented Ms. Evans' talent and dedication, carefully crafting a sense of intimacy. Slowly but surely, the reserved teacher's boundaries began to waver. Ashley could see the internal struggle, the flickers of hesitation, but she pressed on, creating an atmosphere where professionalism gave way to vulnerability. With Coach Davis, Ashley employed a different approach. He was loud, confident, and prone to making inappropriate jokes under the guise of humor. Ashley joined the school's basketball team despite her lack of interest in the sport. She made her presence felt during practices, wearing form-fitting athletic gear and engaging in playful banter with the coach. She laughed at his jokes, even when they made her uncomfortable, and occasionally brushed against him during drills, feigning clumsiness. Over time, she noticed his behavior shift. His casual comments grew more personal, his demeanor more relaxed in her presence. Ashley began to ask for one-on-one training sessions, claiming she wanted to improve her skills for the team. During these sessions, she would feign frustration with her performance, seeking his reassurance. She allowed moments of physical proximity to linger, knowing that his confidence would ultimately lead him to drop his guard. The most challenging target was Principal Thompson. He was guarded and professional, but Ashley had heard the rumors about his past indiscretions. To gain access to him, she deliberately broke minor school rules, arriving late to class, talking back to teachers, and pushing the boundaries of the dress code. Each infraction earned her a summons to his office, where she played the role of a remorseful student seeking guidance. In these meetings, Ashley presented herself as vulnerable and eager to improve, subtly appealing to his ego as a leader. She would lower her gaze, speak in soft tones, and express gratitude for his understanding. Over time, she noticed cracks in his facade. He began to linger during their conversations, his tone shifting from stern to almost paternal. Ashley knew she was wearing him down, slowly dismantling the walls he had built around himself. Each encounter left Ashley feeling a complex mix of emotions. She was in control, manipulating situations to her advantage, but the sense of triumph was accompanied by a growing unease. The lines between her role as a victim and the perpetrator of her own schemes blurred further with every step she took. Despite this, she pressed forward, her resolve unshaken. She convinced herself that she was exposing their weaknesses, holding them accountable for their actions, and taking back the power she felt had been stolen from her. As Ashley moved from one target to the next, she refined her methods, adjusting her approach to suit each individual. She was careful, deliberate, and unrelenting. Her actions were calculated to ensure maximum impact while maintaining her facade as a diligent, innocent student. The atmosphere at school began to shift suddenly as her presence in the lives of these authority figures grew more pronounced. Ashley's plan was unfolding as she had envisioned, but the cost of her actions loomed larger with every calculated move. The effects of Ashley's actions began to ripple through the school, altering the behavior of her targets in ways she had both anticipated and feared. The once confident demeanor of Mr. Peterson was the first to crack. His usually calm and approachable presence in the classroom gave way to nervous energy. He stumbled over his words during lectures, his gaze avoiding the students who once relied on him for guidance. He became more withdrawn, shuffling papers at his desk long after class had ended, as though trying to busy himself and escape his own thoughts. Ashley noticed how he avoided eye contact with her altogether, his usual glances now replaced by an air of unease. Ms. Evans, the reserved music teacher, also showed signs of unraveling. Once passionate about her craft, she now conducted rehearsals with mechanical precision, her warmth replaced by a cold detachment. She avoided lingering in the music room after hours and no longer encouraged students to seek her advice. Ashley watched from a distance as Ms. Evans' self-assurance seemed to wither, her interactions with students curt and devoid of the enthusiasm that had once defined her teaching. The spark in her eyes was gone, replaced by a haunted look that Ashley couldn't ignore. Coach Davis' reaction was different. His boisterous, overly familiar behavior with students took on an aggressive edge. He barked orders more harshly during practices and snapped at students for minor mistakes. The coach who once thrived on camaraderie and banter now seemed to isolate himself. Ashley saw how his interactions became strained, his attempts to maintain control over his emotions leading to further alienation from his team. The change in his demeanor was palpable, and it spread unease among the players who had once idolized him. Principal Thompson exhibited the most dramatic transformation. A man who had always exuded authority and confidence, he now appeared diminished. He avoided making eye contact with students in the hallways and skipped public assemblies, delegating his responsibilities to other administrators. Ashley noticed how he hesitated before speaking in meetings, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. The weight of his actions seemed to hang heavily on him, and the rumors about his absence from the spotlight began to circulate among both staff and students. As Ashley observed these changes, she initially felt a sense of satisfaction. Her plan was working. The people she had targeted were unraveling just as she had intended. But the longer she watched, the more complicated her emotions became. The sight of their struggles stirred something she hadn't anticipated, a gnawing guilt that grew harder to ignore. The faces of her victims began to haunt her, their expressions of fear and unease replaying in her mind when she was alone. One day, as Ashley passed the teacher's lounge, she overheard a hushed conversation. The words "test results" and "clinic" caught her attention, sending a chill through her. She paused, listening intently as the teachers spoke in anxious tones, their voices tinged with dread. It became clear to her that they were discussing something far more serious than personal guilt or shame. The realization hit her like a blow. Her actions had consequences far beyond what she had intended. It wasn't just their reputations or careers at stake. It was their health, their futures, and the lives of their families. For the first time, Ashley felt the full weight of what she had done. Her plan, which had seemed so justified in the beginning, now felt like a reckless spiral out of control. The faces of her targets merged with the imagined faces of their spouses, their children, the people who would be impacted by the fallout of her actions. She found herself questioning whether her need for revenge had blinded her to the collateral damage she was causing. That night, Ashley lay awake, her thoughts racing. The sense of power and control she had once felt was replaced by a deep sense of unease. She began to replay every step of her plan, every calculated move she had made, and wondered if she had gone too far. The lines between justice and cruelty blurred in her mind, leaving her feeling more lost and conflicted than ever before. Ashley spent days wrestling with the consequences of her actions. The weight of what she had done and the ripple effects it had caused became impossible to ignore. The guilt gnawed at her, overshadowing any fleeting satisfaction she had once felt. The faces of her targets haunted her, fragments of fear, shame, and confusion replaying in her mind. She realized she could no longer pretend her actions were justified. She had crossed the line, and the only way to move forward was to confront the truth, no matter the cost. One morning, Ashley resolved to take responsibility for what she had done. Her decision didn't come easily. The thought of exposing herself, her vulnerability, and her carefully hidden pain filled her with dread. But she knew that continuing to live with the weight of her actions would destroy her. She needed to make amends, not just for her victims, but for herself. She reached out to the teachers she had targeted, requesting a meeting. Her message was direct but vague enough to avoid suspicion, emphasizing the importance of their presence. The meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon in the school's conference room. Ashley spent the hours leading up to it preparing herself, rehearsing what she would say, bracing for the reactions she expected to receive. When the time came, the room felt oppressive. The air was thick with tension as the 4 teachers sat around the table, their expressions ranging from confusion to unease. Ashley stood before them, her hands trembling slightly, but her resolve unshaken. She began to speak, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions churning within her. She told them everything, her diagnosis, her mother's secrecy, and the deep well of pain and anger that had consumed her. She described how those feelings had driven her to devise a plan of revenge, targeting them not out of malice, but as a way to reclaim control over her life. As her story unfolded, the expressions on their faces shifted from confusion to shock, and for some, anger. Ashley didn't try to justify her actions. She admitted the harm she had caused and expressed her regret, though she knew that no apology could undo the damage. She told them that she was prepared to accept whatever consequences came her way, even if it meant legal repercussions or public humiliation. She just wanted them to know the truth. The room fell silent when she finished speaking. The teachers exchanged glances, their emotions raw and conflicted. Principal Thompson, who had always prided himself on maintaining control, looked visibly shaken. Ms. Evans' eyes glistened with unshed tears, her face a mix of betrayal and sadness. Coach Davis sat stiffly, his jaw clenched, while Mr. Peterson avoided looking at anyone, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Ashley didn't wait for them to respond. She had already contacted the school board and the police, reporting her actions and detailing the events that had transpired. Within hours, the school was in chaos. News of the scandal spread quickly, attracting media attention and igniting outrage among parents and the community. Ashley was arrested and charged with multiple offenses, including endangerment. The teachers faced investigations into their conduct, and though they were also seen as victims, the inappropriate nature of their actions led to varying degrees of disciplinary action. Some lost their positions, while others faced public scrutiny and personal disgrace. The fallout was immense. Ashley's story became a national headline, sparking debates about HIV stigma, the ethical responsibilities of educators, and the systemic failures that allowed such incidents to occur. The scandal forced schools across the district to reevaluate their policies, implementing stricter guidelines to protect students and foster a culture of accountability. For Ashley, the road to redemption was long and arduous. After serving her time in a juvenile detention facility, she began to rebuild her life. She dedicated herself to advocacy, speaking at schools and community centers about the dangers of stigma and the importance of empathy and understanding. Her story, though controversial, became a powerful tool for change, inspiring others to confront their own biases and assumptions about HIV. Years later, Ashley stood before a crowded auditorium, sharing her journey with a group of students. She spoke candidly about her mistakes, her pain, and the lessons she had learned. Her honesty resonated with her audience, many of whom had never considered the profound impact of stigma or the complexities of forgiveness. Ashley knew she could never erase the harm she had caused, but she found solace in the work she did to make a difference. Each speech, each conversation, and each step forward was a way to honor the pain she had endured and the lives she had affected. She had turned her darkest moments into a mission for change, proving that even in the aftermath of destruction, there was a path to healing and growth.